Today I'm chatting with Liz again about finding and following your passion. We cover some of the biggest roadblocks and myths and how to overcome them. And we start this episode by looking at how Liz has improved her article writing since the last episode. Now, if you missed the previous episode, it was all about me helping Liz increase her article writing speed by 300%. So if you want to know how she did that, make sure you listen to episode number 11. So I'll leave it at that. Let's dive into the episode and look at how you can find and follow your passion. So I'm here with Liz Seda for another episode, and before we get started on this one, you, Liz, have been using some of the tips we covered in the last episode on article writing, and you mentioned that they helped you go from 3 articles a month to about 3 a week. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah. Before I used your tips, I was doing maybe 1 every 2 weeks. And if I was lucky, I would be able to do another one. But now I'm doing 3 a week and it's awesome.
So you went from, say, 3 a week or 3 a month to 12 a month. So is that 300% or?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, the change has been incredible. I mean, now I don't sit down at the computer and dreading, the whole process, the agony of writing. Now it's much easier.
So which of the tips did you find most helpful?
The most helpful tips were the outlining and the free writing, the first drafts, the crappy first drafts one.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got over, sounding like an amateur and the fear of the writing not being good, as soon as I got over that, I started to write a lot faster. And it wasn't even all that bad. And then I would go back and edit it anyway. But as soon as I got over that fear, I started writing very fast.
So how did you actually get over that fear?
Well, when I noticed myself hesitating, over a phrase or a sentence, and usually what I would do in the past is just think until I found the right words I wanted to use. And a lot of the times I wouldn't find the words. So then I would just stop writing at that point. I would either skip that sentence, or I would just put whatever I thought of at the time and kind of close my eyes and grit my teeth and just just go forward and promise myself that I would go back and look at that, when I'm done. So
just letting it be crappy and getting the article done because you'll be back to rewrite it anyway.
Right. But, a lot of me didn't want to do that. I didn't want to leave it. I wanted to fix it right then. But I just closed my eyes and wrote whatever came.
Yeah, I think that's a big block for people. It's like they think they can't feel any of the fear or resistance, when in fact it's more about just keeping on going despite the resistance, because I get that a lot too. So I just keep on going, writing, and get the article done. Then I come back and rewrite it.
Yeah. So that's been amazing. And the outlining has also been amazing. I outline everything I do now. And I'm surprised on how much quickly things go. I mean, even if I don't end up following the outline 100%, it still helps me write the article. And even if I don't follow the outline at all, I end up writing something completely different, it still helps me. So I was surprised with that.
Yeah, I mean, the techniques are so simple. When I tell them to people, they're like, okay, sure. And then they don't use them, or maybe they come back 2 years later and they're hitting themselves on their forehead, wondering why they didn't start sooner.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad that I took your words to heart and I started right away.
Yeah. So if the person you listening haven't listened to the previous episode on becoming a prolific writer and writing faster articles, go back and listen to that. But only if you want to write better articles faster and have a bigger impact with your writing. So only with that condition. So in today's episode, we'll be talking about passion. So Do you want to kick things off with a question?
Sure. I was wondering, how does one go about finding their passion?
The perspective I've started having in just the last few months is that what if you didn't have to know what your passion was in order to start? So all you really have to figure out is what excites you right now and then follow that.
So you mean not deciding that XYZ thing is my passion to just go forward?
Yeah, because what difference does it really make when we decide that, let's say, my passion is knitting and I want to do knitting? When really, after you've labeled your passion, you still come back to this moment and you have to decide what you want to do next.
Right. So, but what if I feel like my passion, what if I feel like I have a lot of passions? So, what if I like knitting and I like animals and I like computers as well, and I like them all equally?
Well, then it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to build a business, you still have to find the intersection between what you enjoy doing, what people are willing to pay for, and what's actually a viable business. So it depends on where you want to go with it. Because if you don't have a focus, it doesn't really matter what you do because you can just play around, you can play with animals, you can do the knitting and all that stuff. So it depends on your focus.
So, if I want to build a business or a lifestyle business around something that I'm passionate about, should I first decide which one of those interests I want to go forward with, or should I do all of them, or where do I start?
Well, the way I would start is by diving into at least a market where people are making a living. So if you're interested in, say, business and something like naked mole rats, which Sonia Simone says. So if you had to, to decide between business and naked mole rats, you might want to go with business, even if you're just slightly more passionate about the mole rats. So you want to look at, if you're building a business, you want to look at where there's actually competition and where people are already making a living doing what you want to do.
Right. And, you know, actually, Henry, there's another thing that I've been having experience with clients is they like a lot of different things, but they don't love anything in particular. So the possibilities for them are endless. They could go into cars and they could go into interior designing, or they could go into I don't know, web design. They could do all of these things because all of these things interest them, but none of them lights a fire. So I was wondering what your perspective was about that.
Well, first I'd want to learn or discover what they mean by, like, when they talk about the fire, or however they define that thing that they haven't yet gotten to, because sometimes that thing may be something they'll never get to. So they're chasing after something that's kind of like the heavens part and a red carpet magically comes down and the mole rat king comes and welcomes you.
Right.
So something like that, because to me, in my experience and in working with now hundreds of people with this, is that following your passion is a lot less glamorous than a lot of people make it seem. Like when you get started initially, it feels amazing, you're enthusiastic, but then you actually have to put in the work, you have to experiment, and you have to start just focus on taking one step at a time. And you do that by following your heart. At least that's what I do. So I follow my excitement and I just focus on what I want to do now. So not going into the future 5 years and thinking I could do this, I could do that. And really, if you have so many possibilities, then it comes down to trying stuff, because you won't figure stuff out by thinking more, because you've already thought about stuff for long enough. So you have to start, and that way you'll figure out what actually lights that fire within you.
Right. Right. I do have a client who's been thinking about his passion for, I mean, I want to say a few months now. And literally, I'm telling him, like, you have all of the information inside of your head 3 months ago that you do now. What else could possibly happen inside of your head that would all of a sudden manifest a sudden passion inside of you? And it's this fear of action, this fear of getting out there, this fear of actually doing, because thinking is really safe. Planning it out is really safe. But then when you have to take action, all of a sudden you need to do more planning because there's that fear there.
Yeah, so I would dive into what actually the fear is and work on maybe making it, like letting it go in whatever, using whatever modality or technique you like using,
Right.
but also realizing that you have to be aware of not getting into the trap of trying to become totally fearless.
Right.
So you don't want to use the techniques as crutches, because the sooner you take action and the sooner you move forward despite your fears, the sooner you realize that the fears are just fears. They're past conditioning, things we've picked up, things like, what if I failed and I look bad in front of people like I did when I was 5 years old, or in front of my parents, or whatever your specific thing is. So it comes down to realizing that you can either keep thinking and things won't get any better, or you can take action, take the quote unquote risk and see what happens. And I've also found that sometimes you just have to let people get to that stage where they're so sick of being where they're at right now that they take action.
Right.
So sometimes it's okay to just let people think about things until they get so pissed off at themselves that they start moving.
Right. Right. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so say I think I know what I want to do first. Whether or not I feel a fire or not, this is something that is of interest to me and I know what I want to do. So how do I know if I could possibly make money out of it? I mean, I think that you touched on it before, but if you can go more into it.
It comes down to seeing if other people are doing it. So looking at the core need or core problem you're solving and seeing if anyone else is solving that problem. Now, obviously, you can go into markets where there's no one, but the risk is going to be much higher.
Mm-hmm. Well, wouldn't you say that going into a market where there's already competition is risky?
Not really, because when there's competition there, it's proof that there are a lot of customers that are actually willing to pay to have their problem solved. So it's actually more of a guarantee that there's demand. But yes, there's the risk of having to stand out so people actually notice you and maybe coming at that problem from a different angle. But really, the risk is higher if you go into a market where there's no competition, because you risk having absolutely no demand.
I see. So if there's a lot of competition, why would anybody, why would I get anybody's business? Why would they choose me?
Well, because you have a unique perspective. So when I started my blog, I started with personal development because I just felt like that's what I wanted to do. I didn't set out to make money with my blog. I just wanted to share what I was doing. And as time went on, people wanted to know more about the online business aspect, how I was able to travel and do all the location independent stuff. So at first I thought that I wouldn't stand out because there were so many personal development bloggers out there that had huge audiences and obviously knew more than me. But I decided to start anyway because I was so sick of my own excuses that I just wanted to see what would happen. So I challenged my assumptions and fears, and I discovered that people actually wanted to hear my perspective. So there were a group of people that wanted to hear what I had to say and how I looked at things. So if you're excited about sharing something, that means that there's actually someone on the other end that's excited about listening to that. But the thing is that it takes time to build an audience. And if you're just going to do this for 6 months, 12 months, then you may as well not start at all. So you have to be in it for the long haul, and you have to be willing to work.
I see. So you think that, my unique voice could possibly or potentially attract a completely unique subset of people who may not have resonated fully with others. They could resonate fully with me.
Yeah, and the thing with starting is that with time your voice will grow, and you may it may things may happen like they did for me, where you start with one topic and you slowly evolve into another one because you discover what you're excited about and what people want to hear from you.
Right. All right. Awesome. But that's okay for, young people that are in their 20s and single and married and not married and they don't have kids. What about, you know, when you have responsibilities? I mean, how can you justify doing that?
Well, you also have a responsibility to yourself. So what kind of a role model would you be to your kids if you didn't follow your passion, didn't follow the things that truly make you happy?
Right.
And the thing is also that you don't have to just quit your job and let go of everything. You can build up gradually on the side while you have a full-time job. So you can just put in 30 minutes a day, 60 minutes a day, because if you truly want to do this, you can find those small time pockets and you can make this work if you plan your time well and you eliminate some of the TV watching or whatever you do that actually may not be the best use of your time if you want to follow your passion. So to me, this is just another reason people have for not moving forward. And that's fine if you aren't serious about following your passion or building a passion business, then don't try to force something that you're not really interested in because it sounds good. So if
Mm-hmm.
you want to work and you want to be with your family, and I mean, to me, that's fine. But if you truly want to go after your passion, you have to start noticing these small or rather big excuses that tend to creep up on you and stop you in your tracks.
Right. Okay, but I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of money. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of money and I have kids and I have responsibilities and I just feel like I shouldn't be putting my family in jeopardy, especially when I barely have any money to start a business.
Well, the good news is that you don't need a lot of money, especially with the kind of businesses that I start. So I started my online business for under $100. So you basically need an idea, a lot of determination. You need a website, you need a web host, and you can get all of that for under $100 to get started.
Mm,
And if you say that you can't scrape together $100, then I would really reevaluate how serious you are about this.
right.
And something else I want to throw in there is that while I got started for under 100, I still wasted a lot of money on get rich quick stuff and
Mm,
programs and coaching, and wasted over $10,000
yeah,
just trying to figure this stuff out. So it helps to have a source of information you can actually trust.
right. Absolutely. Actually, that reminds me because when I first started, Henry, I did everything I could get my hands on. I was like, oh, this niche sites. If you just build a bunch of niche sites and automate them, like 100 of them, then you'll just be rich and you won't have to do any work. That's awesome. So, I spend hundreds of dollars on domains and learning all of this stuff. And it turns out that it's a lot more work than you think. And it takes a lot more skill than you think. And it wasn't even something that I really liked. So there goes, a couple of $100. And every time that I tried to make money fast, like very quickly, I always wasted money every single time.
Yeah,
So,
it's basically I did the same thing. So it comes down to the fact that when you prioritize money over what you're excited about, it tends to lead to not the best situations. So you want to find that intersection
mhm,
between passion and money. And I did the same thing in the beginning where I would buy like pay-per-click guides and I would read them and I would never use them because I didn't want to spend money on pay-per-click pay-per-click advertising, and I just did this with a lot of programs. So that was my phase of just trying to learn everything so I could do things perfectly,
right.
and it doesn't quite work that way in the real world.
No, it doesn't. And then also, Henry, so I started my blog, as kind of a Hail Mary. it was like, gosh, this isn't working out. I've tried all of this stuff to make money really fast and it's not working. Let me just try this blogging thing. And there was no fire inside of me, really. I kind of like to write, kind of, but again, I was doing it because I heard that it was a good way to make income. But as I was being productive on the blog and as I was working on it, the fire started to build. And then all of a sudden, it turns into this huge passion that I have to spread my message via my blog. So, I mean, passion might not always come right at the outset, it might come from doing something or from working on something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember reading, I think, a Russian proverb where they said something like, motivation comes after action, not before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes back to the how we define passion. So you have to be really careful of what you expect passion to be. So in your case, you may just have been interested in blogging, which is why you started. And then
Right.
it grew from there. And I think you've mentioned that you've also gotten a lot of indirect opportunities and made a lot of connections because of your blog.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
So the actual thing you start doing doesn't necessarily have to be the solution. It could just lead to different things and open new doors. That's
Yep.
why I keep emphasizing the fact that you have to follow your heart and follow that excitement, because to me, that's your inner GPS. And while your mind may not be able to see where it's heading, it usually turns out just fine, and life tends to happen in unexpected ways, even if you try to plan everything.
Right. That is incredible that you say that because I believe that too. And if Henry, if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I would have been like, this woo woo, person wants me to believe in magic, or
Yeah.
oh, just thinking is believing. I was like, I need proof, but I what I was doing wasn't working. So I was like, what the heck? Might as well start thinking positively and just following my heart. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen was is I actually got what I wanted. So it was strange. So I guess there was my proof, and my rational mind didn't want to believe it. My rational mind was like, this is a coincidence. But when it happens so many times in a row, you kind of have to give in to that concept.
Yeah, and for me, it happened over time. So I was very against this kind of stuff in the beginning as well. But after some time, I reached that state of exhaustion of just living logically. And then I started following my heart and my passion. And over time, as my mind saw the results and the changes in my life, it started just trusting the process. And I became sort of like a more holistic person where my mind trusted my heart, and I just kind of feel my way through life right now.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. And like I said, if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I would have thought that you were doomed, but now I know better. So I have another question. Say that I am a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or something like that. And I want to quit my job, but I'm worried because when I quit my job, then I'll no longer have a reputation in society. I'll no longer belong anywhere. And I'm worried that I'm going to lose my sense of self and my sense of identity.
Hmm. Well, the first thing I'd look at is the discrepancy there, because if you keep doing something you don't love, you already don't belong within yourself.
Mm.
So it's already giving you that loss of self, because if you want to follow your passion and if you're having these fears, basically you just have a few objections and you want someone to tell you that it's okay, it's going to turn out fine. But again, like I said earlier, you don't necessarily have to quit your job to get started. So you can start a small thing on the side, and as it builds, you can keep on working at it. And once you get momentum, you can quit your job if you are that kind of person. So you have to always remember that while you may say that or think that you will like lose your identity, the fact is that you're already losing your identity by doing something your heart is not in 100%.
Great answer. Great answer. So, why do you think it's so hard for people to let go of that socially accepted title? Because I know that although a lot of people say, they're scared of failing and XYZ, this and that, a lot of the times they're just scared of what is my wife going to think when she can't introduce me as doctor and she introduced me as cupcake maker, Or
Yeah.
like, or what is my mom going to think? Or what are my friends going to think if I stop this law practice and instead I build teddy bears, Like, they're not going to respect me anymore. I'm not going to be worth anything. And everybody's going to think I'm a joke. So, why do you think that that's so important?
Well, I think, first of all, this is kind of hardwired in our brain. So when we lived in the jungle, we had our tribe. If we were ostracized, it usually meant death. So these social kind of situations are usually very heavy, and our lizard brain really likes to pressure us with them. But when you say that you're afraid, or if someone's afraid that people won't respect them, again, I just want to turn that around and get people aware of the fact that if you don't do something you love, you're already not respecting yourself.
Right.
So you're already seeing yourself as a joke just because you want to please others. So to me, it comes down to prioritizing your happiness over what other people think, because what other people think is none of their business. And I myself I've always been a polarity responder. So I kind of enjoy when people freak out about what I do and when they can't understand what I do. So I've had a few people actually ask me for almost 10 years now when I'm going to get a job. So during that time, I've been a professional poker player. I've traveled around the world, and I've never worked a real job in my life, and I'm making a living doing something I love. And they just can't get out of that mindset where they think I should have a quote unquote real job.
Right.
And
right.
you have to realize that people don't always understand what you do, which is why they react so negatively. So the negativity and all the respect and all that stuff that comes from others is actually a sign of what's going on inside of other people. So if someone tells you that they don't like what you're doing, quitting your job, that means that they're afraid of quitting their job or doing something they actually enjoy. So they're projecting their fears onto you.
Right. Right. And also, what you said about putting others' happiness before your own, if you don't quit your job, if you really hate it, if you really hate it, and this is not something like a phase, maybe you just don't like the work environment, or maybe you just don't like that particular place, but if you really hate what you're doing and you stay, basically what you're saying is everybody else is more important than I am. Like, what everybody else thinks is more important than me.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that is, just think about that for a second, right? Would you ever say that everybody, all these strangers, the generalized public that encompasses this everybody is way more important, what they want is way more important than what you want in terms of your life?
Yeah, exactly. Well put. So you have to just prioritize what you actually want from life. And if people are so against what you're doing, they're so against you following your passion, I think it may be time to find new people to hang around with.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another thing, Henry, that I've encountered, which is people think that you either stay in the job that you hate and, not be ostracized, or you quit and you go at it alone forever. And as if there aren't any others who feel like you do. And it's not true. Basically, you quit your job and you leave that pack of people and you just move to another pack of people that's more accepting of what you want. And these people always exist no matter what you're doing, whatever, naked mole rats or whatever
Yeah.
you said before. I'm sure that there's a bunch of people who are so passionate about naked mole rats. They like have committees about naked mole rats, and they have competitions and conferences. I mean, this is a big, big world, and we have the internet to connect us all. I mean, I'm in the United States, and Henry's over in being Swedish somewhere, you
Yeah,
know?
I'm actually technically I'm in Finland.
Okay, he's being Finnish then.
Yeah, and something that popped up in my mind was that the way we organize our problems and organize life, we have to remember that those are just concepts that we've made up, and concepts are thoughts that pop up that we choose to believe in, and
Mhm.
things that we've picked up as we've grown up. So if someone's kept telling you that you're not good enough to be an artist and you want to be an artist, then you'll keep reminding yourself of that until you
Mhm.
actually get so sick of it that you take action. And like you said, it's not so much about doing one thing and then it's all over and doing one another thing, because life is just it's just a constant state of flow. So you may quit your job, you may do this, like if you like blogging, you may do that for a year, but then another opportunity pops up that's even more exciting. So when you actually follow your heart and you follow those nudges your heart gives you, it just flows, and you can actually start trusting life
Yeah.
much more because it tends to unfold organically. And if you look back at your life, you'll most likely see that the the biggest life-changing events in your life were not planned. So they just happened, and that's life just happening to you, or
Right.
just life unfolding is a better way of putting it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And what you said about concepts, they help you navigate the world, definitely, but you can always change them, like your concept of what a real job is. In order for you to get a job, you had one concept, and in order for you to have a lifestyle business, you need a new one that fits better,
Yeah.
so you can use them to your advantage, right?
Yeah, and something else that I forgot a moment ago, but just remembered is when you said that you would have never believed this woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating is that even scientists have realized a long time ago that basically everything is made up of atoms,
Hmm.
and atoms are made up of mostly air.
Hmm.
So the chairs we sit on, the desk, the Apple products we use, and everything else is basically they're the same building blocks. So there's no real distinction between us and what we consider the world out there.
Hmm.
So then when people say that something is a coincidence, well, if you want to touch your left hand to your nose, is that a coincidence? Because if there are no borders, then that's where I run out of words.
Right, right. Then there's no more words to explain that concept. We have to go meditate over tea now,
Yeah, it's
right?
something to ponder.
Exactly. That's awesome. So, what if I'm ready to do this? I'm ready to pursue my passion. What is one thing you would ask me to keep in mind so that I keep going when things get really tough?
To just keep following your excitement, because your mind will try to scare the living daylights out of you, especially in the beginning, because you're basically going against everything that society thinks is accepted. So if you're quitting your job, you're just following your passion and you're quote unquote go doing something crazy, then in the beginning it's good to take small steps, but always default to following your excitement and listening to what you want to do. So prioritize your happiness and try not to hurt other people if you can, but always do something you enjoy doing.
Right. I totally agree. And I have a theme on my blog, which is this theme of selfishness. And so everywhere on my about page, in my posts, I'm like, I advocate 100% selfishness. And of course I get the hate mail, like, you should die. You're an evil person who likes to kill baby seals. And I'm like, that's not it at all. I just think that people spend way too much time worrying about what others want, what others think, and what others prefer, and how they can cater to everybody else other than themselves. And then all that resentment builds up, and you never get what you want, and then you're never happy. And then all of a sudden, you come to this realization that life is nothing but a pile of crap.
Yeah.
And you wonder why, because you never once lived your own life. So live it, and other people who understand that you have the right to live your life won't question you. They won't say you're a horrible, selfish person. They'll say you're an awesome person for taking care of yourself and, lighting yourself on fire and putting yourself out in the world in the best possible way rather than in this, resentful way.
Yeah, and when you really look deeply, when those people who call people evil that are selfish, they're actually even more selfish because they are repressing their natural joy, and they feel that you're evil or someone else is evil when they're doing something that they don't feel they can do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that reminds me of another thing, Henry, which is when you tell people you're going to quit and follow your passion, not only do they not understand, but on a subconscious level, they get afraid because they probably thought about doing that at some point in their lives and they haven't. And so if you go and do it, then you prove that it's possible. And then basically every decision that they've made to stay safe for their entire life becomes, null. Like if they hadn't made those decisions consciously, if they've always wanted to do something and they haven't, and then you go out and you do it, then they start to question their entire worldview.
Yeah, they actually have to start questioning what's going on, or they have to unfriend you.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfriend you and not know what you're doing, or keep the judgment in the front of their mind. Like, this person's crazy. I would never do this to my family,
Yeah, and usually this comes about, if people actually stay friends with you, it comes about where they just try to stop you, or if they're kind of clever, they may try to manipulate you in subtle ways.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you'll feel this because the energy starts feeling a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I do these things.
That's true. That's true, Henry. You'll start to feel this guilt and kind of shame. They'll say things like, I thought you're more responsible than this, or how can you do this to your wife, or, I don't want to see you in trouble, or, things like that.
Yeah, I always some cool things you can say there is when someone says, "How can you do this to your wife?" You just come back and say, "How can you do this to me?"
Right.
And and it's fun to just flip that back, because when people say you'll get in trouble, or they say you said, "I don't want to see you getting in trouble," then well, the friend who's saying this is already getting you in trouble by making you feel bad.
Right.
So you can almost always flip back what they're saying onto the situation.
Right.
And something else I remember is that you need a lot of patience to follow your passion. So it's easy to try and force progress, and you'll know you're forcing progress because you'll start feeling frustrated. You'll be confused because you're trying to figure out something that can't be figured out. This is also why just following your excitement is the best way forward, because sometimes the best way forward might be just writing something on a piece of paper, or taking a day off, or just relaxing. So whenever you start feeling frustrated, take a step back, because what I've noticed in my life is that when I relax and let things unfold in their natural way, things flow much easier, and I'm just in a better synchronization with what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So true. Amen to that.
So do you have anything else popping up before we wrap this up? Any final words of wisdom?
No, I mean, nothing else popping up right now. What you said about patience is really important, because I definitely almost gave up one time. And I'm glad that I kept going, because a lot of good things happened. And also, when you keep going, it kind of it weeds out the people who aren't really serious. You know, the
Yeah.
people who just, man, maybe they want a hobby. If you're serious, then you'll make it for sure.
Yeah, it also it comes back to that point where when you're so sick of just staying where you are and you start moving forward, that's when you start becoming focused and really determined about where you want to go, and the fact that you don't care if you fail because you'll just keep going or die trying.
Right, exactly. I mean, at some point, your standards change, and all of a sudden, it's not okay anymore to live like this. Just like, maybe you're not okay with living in a hut in the jungle, with no air conditioning, electricity, or contact with other men. Okay, if you're not comfortable with that, then you're not going to let that happen to yourself. If you're not comfortable with being in a job you hate, you're going to raise your standards and you're going to find a way or make a way to
Yeah,
put your life back in that standard that you've drawn.
yeah, just because you're determined or sick of where you're at doesn't mean that you'll automatically succeed. It just means that you're more willing to experiment and more willing to make mistakes, because the quicker you take action, the more you quote unquote fail, the faster you'll make progress and figure out what exactly you want to do and what works and what doesn't.
Yep. And it's also the best way to learn too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's all. That's all I have.
Awesome. So once again, where can people find you if they want to visit and see what you're up to?
If you want to see what I'm up to, you can come to alifeonyourterms.com, visit me, and say hi. Okay? I want to hear from you.
Good stuff. So once again, thanks for popping in and doing another episode.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
And there you have it, a whole episode filled with passion and excitement. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And remember, if you want more tips on how to turn your passion into a thriving lifestyle business, visit wakeupcloud.com and make sure you join the free newsletter and grab your free goodies. So that's all for this episode. This is Henry signing out. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you soon.